Well, today marks 10 years since the Pike County massacre. An entire family murdered in their sleep in southern Ohio. 3 children were the only survivors. The killers wound up being a family they knew. That's according to prosecutors. A decade later, there's still one trial remaining. Senior investigator Sarah Goldenberg gives us an inside look at the biggest criminal investigation in Ohio history.
As we profile the case in our true crime podcast, Dark Side of the Land.
The horrific crimes unfolded across 4 crime scenes in Pike County, Ohio on April 21st, 2016, shaking the community in the rolling hills of Appalachia about 75 miles east of Cincinnati. Who killed the Roden family?
All 8 victims were killed in cold blood. They were shot in their own homes. They were brutally and viciously executed.
These were the victims. Christopher Roden Sr. and his older brother, Kenneth Roden, both in their early 40s. His cousin, Gary Roden, and Chris Roden Sr.'s former wife, Dana Lynn Roden, both in their 30s. Their children, Clarence Frankie Roden, 20 years old, Hannah Mae Roden, 19 years old, Christopher Roden Jr., 16 years old, and Frankie's fiancée, Hannah Hazel Gilly, 20 years old. The killers spared 3 children, a 5-day-old baby girl, a 6-month-old baby boy, and a 3-year-old boy.
They're gone. Nothing we can do on this earth will ever bring them back.
So many victims, lives shattered, and children left without parents. Several members of another family, the Wagners, ended up charged with their murders. Jake Wagner and his mother, Angela Wagner, took plea deals in exchange for their cooperation and testimony. A judge sentenced Jake to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 32 years. Angela Wagner was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Jake's older brother, George Wagner IV, pleaded not guilty. A judge sentenced him to 8 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. And it's not over yet. The patriarch of the family, George Billy Wagner, pleaded not guilty and is waiting for a trial date. I sat down with Ohio Department of Public Safety Director Andy Wilson to talk about the horrific crimes. He was a special prosecutor on this case. Wilson talked to us about the motive behind the killings and what they learned when Jake started cooperating with them. This all started due to a custody dispute over Hannah Roden and Jake Wagner's little girl.
Angela Wagner wanted that baby. That baby was going to be raised as a Wagner. And if they had to kill to make that happen, they were willing to kill to make that happen. So they were pretty sure that the Rodens would figure out that it was the Wagners that did it, and they'd come back and kill the Wagners. So the plan evolved from just killing Hannah to, hey, we got to wipe out the entire family, or at least the part of the family that's a threat to us. So that's pure evil. I mean, pure evil.
Investigators didn't hone in on the Wagner family right away. It took so much to get to this point. Find out why this case reached as far away as Alaska and how shoes, forensics, and surveillance video would lead them to the suspects. Plus, why crucial evidence was later found hidden in plain sight. We cover all of that in our latest video podcast episode. Sarah Goldenberg, 19 News.
You can listen to Pure Evil, the Roden family murders, on Dark Side of the Land. That comes out tomorrow wherever you get your podcasts.